All right, good morning, everyone. Nice to see some new old friends. And most of you have been with us for all fall, really, as we've been reviewing, going over in some detail, Tonglen practice. And I think those of you who are showing up today, some new people, also have some experience with Tonglen. I think of Tonglen, as many of you know, Tonglen was developed and used a lot in the Tibetan monasteries. It comes out of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition as a way of cultivating and strengthening our capacity for compassion for the suffering of others, the suffering of the world. And I've come to think of it as more than that. In a way, its basic practice, its basic technology is like a template for healing duality in ourselves and in the world. And I think of it as a paradigm, a new paradigm for our growth, for becoming perhaps fully human, for moving away from the paradigm of the ego to the paradigm of the heart, for teaching us how to do that, helping us to make that transition. It's totally natural, of course, as the humans that we are, and in our own human development, to come from the paradigm of the ego, even though we also have wonderful hearts. But our ego is our way of framing duality, framing a sense of ourselves in relationship to the world. And we take it for granted as, well, this is how it is. There's I'm me and there's the world. And then all the experiences I have that add up to my idea of what I am and of what the world are kind of part of my conditioning. And ultimately a kind of limitation. Right? I'm limited to the particular conditioned point of view, what I'm capable of, what I react to, what pushes my buttons, how my whole nervous system is wired is tied in with that. And we experience, of course, every day as human beings that wiring, it can be a severe limitation on how we function as human beings when it allows us to come fully from the heart, to see others from the heart, to live in a world of empathy and reciprocity and compassion, or a world of fear and contraction and even the causing of suffering and pain. And also this ego self that we are naturally can only handle so much. It's kind of a guideline for our limitations. A healthy ego is good, and a healthy ego is capable, and a healthy ego directs a lot of our activity in the world, including our spiritual practice. So I'm not saying that the ego is bad, but we also have to understand that the ego is a structure that has built-in limitation, and we see how its limitation also limits what we can become as human beings. So to begin to, as we begin to recognize that there are aspects to what we are as beings, as human beings, as spiritual beings, that come from even a deeper foundation or deeper root than the ego, that come from the nature of being itself. You might say from the nature of the divine itself. A capacity for love, a capacity for compassion, a capacity for seeing others that is greater than sometimes the limitation that the ego puts on it. And we relate that in our talking this fall. We've been relating that also to the capacities of the heart, that in a way we're born as a heart capacity. We're born as a heart field. That heart field, in a sense, is an expression of the nature of universal heart field. a heart field of consciousness, of reciprocal relationship, uh, of a kind of integral wholeness of being. And we're born as that. We have the heart represents that. But we're also born into a body where we have to deal with the dualism of our physical experience, and we develop a nervous system that responds to that and consequently has to deal with moving out, closing in, protecting, and that kind of governs how we learn to use our hearts. So Tonglen is a specific Buddhist practice for opening our heart to the suffering of others, but in the course of it, it teaches us something basic about how to be present as ourselves, how to be present in the world, how to be present with ourselves, including the parts of ourselves that we may tend to push away and are not integrated, and so keep us from becoming whole. And to the extent we're not whole, to that extent, we also can't be fully available to others, because some part of us is still going to be involved in making it work for me, finding my own wholeness, etc. Sometimes seemingly, to my mind, at the expense of others. But as we come into the integrity of what we actually are, our actual capacity, then our human capacity is completely available, just truly to see others and to be there for others. And I think of that as part of the model of where our evolution, our true evolution as human beings, as spiritual beings, can go, and what the great spiritual teachings are trying to coach us in, you might say. So we've been looking at Tonglen practice over these 3 months. And in the work we've done so far, we've also spent a lot of time looking at the foundations of that practice, looking at the necessity to be more integrated in mind and body, and to have an understanding of how to be present with the heart, and to how to, in that integration of mind, body, and you might say just aware presence, and in our meditation practice in general, as we've been doing it together over these last many months, finding a more integrated foundation in the body, in our awareness, in the breath, and all these things that give us a foundation for a less reactive way of being in the world, beginning to let go of some of our projections as well as our reactions, and begin to rest in the present moment as whole beings, and to train ourselves in that way, to be whole, to be present, to be aware, to be open. We looked at ways of working just with the body itself to begin to embody or to use the body to support those states of being. And then we also looked at the nature, how to understand the nature of the heart so that we don't simply hold it the way the ego might hold it. As I'm a human being, I have this heart. The heart is associated, I know, with emotions, but I only have so much capacity for emotion. And I can also get overwhelmed by other people. And how much suffering do you really expect me to take on? And we tend to do things, we tend to dramatize our experience in that way. And we've been learning to look at the heart not as that idea that the ego holds, but that sense of the heart that begins to open up for us in a state of presence, in which we can begin to hold and feel the heart inwardly as a presence that opens out, you might say, from us and behind us to a universal heart, our universal capacity, or ourselves as not only expressions of, but windows to that universal capacity. We talked about how the Sufis will often say the heart is the entrance point to the spirit. It's like a two-way window. It's the way the universe opens to the world, and it's also the way we as egos can open up to spirit. When we pay attention to the heart, it begins to open us up to our larger life. So when we think of the heart, and when we say in Tonglen, we're breathing into the heart, welcoming into the heart, it's not our little heart that can be so easily overwhelmed or that triggers all of our own reactivity or emotional limitations. It's beginning to see ourselves as an open space, and our heart as an open space and a doorway into the infinite, into that realm where everything that appears divided and dualistic and broken on this side, you might say, is understood or experienced in the aspect of its fundamental wholeness and healed state of being. And that when we breathe into the heart, we're breathing in the duality, we're breathing in the pain or the suffering, we're breathing in the brokenness into that greater unified world of spirit. And as we breathe out, we're breathing out from that world through our hearts and back into the world, and being able to give back support, love, healing in all its various forms. So we're becoming a servant, you might say, to that process. We're becoming empty to that process. And in that process and in that practice, we are helping ourselves to begin to rest into and we rewire, right, our own functioning so that we become more capable of that. So then we've been working with Tonglen to integrate the parts of ourselves, working with Tonglen to integrate and to welcome in and to support those around us, those our loved ones, those who are close to us, those who we know may be going through some kind of a suffering, and we want to be there for them. And we explained that even with people that we care about, sometimes we are not available or we shut down simply because we're overwhelmed. We don't know how to be there for someone, or we see somebody in pain and there's almost an embarrassment about what can I offer. So even when our love is there, we sometimes don't know how to allow it to be present or to express it. So even then, Tonglen helps to give us a way. It says you don't have to figure things out. You don't have to take care of that person or know what you need to do. You just need to know that you're free to be present and available and supportive at the heart. That you can just feel, be open to that person and breathe them in. That you can send from your heart love back. So that we're not just kind of stuck sitting with our ideas about myself or other, but we enter back into a flow. We're, in a sense, relearning how to always be in a flow of reciprocity, to always be in a flow of receiving and giving and receiving, which is what Tonglen in Tibetan means, giving and receiving. So again, to me, the significance of that, as we've talked about it, is that now I'm putting myself in the mode of giving and receiving rather than fixation and separation and projection and withdrawal. I'm coming back into the mode of flow, of empathy, of the empathy fields, which is the true nature of what we are and of the heart when we're not fixating it. So we looked at our relationship to individuals, to people that we know who we may not be that close to, but we're aware of them in our lives. We looked at our relationship to aspects of our own suffering and our past relationships, to our inner child. We looked at it in relationship a little bit to other individuals who we may even have a conflictual relationship with, or difficult relationship with, or who we don't like or hate, for whatever reason. And is there a way that I can open to that person? And if I'm open to a person, even someone I love, but then there are other issues coming up when I try to do Tonglen so that I can't do Tonglen, what do I do then? And we talked about how at that point we can do Tonglen with those parts of ourselves that get in the way until we're clear enough again to do Tonglen with others. So Tonglen is a very fluid tool. It doesn't get stuck anywhere. It's helping us to always come back into the flow of healing. And today, finally, those of you who are just jumping in today are jumping in to a big demand. And that is, how do we use our Tonglen to really be there for the world? for the suffering of the world and all the suffering that's going on in the world that we really are, in some a certain level, bombarded with all the time. There's a lot going on that we receive because the media, is now our extended nervous system. And so we're aware of things that are not in our immediate environment. And there's enough to be aware of in our immediate environment. And sometimes we're less aware of that because we're just hearing the drama and the stories that come to us on the news. And when we do, there may be several ways, because that's really pervasive right now, is how we hear about the world. And we all experience that bombardment and that pain. And we'll tend to respond, in one of several ways. In part, this is a part of us that's learned to shut a lot of it out. We hear it, we acknowledge it, but there's no room. We can't deal with it. We can't take it into our hearts. We don't know how to be with it. It just contributes, you might say, to a sense of, oh man, things are so bad. Or, oh, I feel so much pain, and there's nothing I can do. And so I feel lesser because of it. I haven't really necessarily allowed in the suffering or the pain. I just acknowledge it mentally. And I say, oh, right. Or, so I may kind of just, in a sense, deaden a little bit in response naturally to all that information. Or I may allow myself to be a little stimulated, right? We get plugged into the news. We get really interested, almost like an addiction, to hear what's going on. And then we may get all upset and stimulated, and it's kind of like an addictive level. We go around and around, but we don't really go deeper into ourselves with it. And it's not a real way of being there with others, right? It's just another level of stimulation. Or at times, it may really get through to us, and we let it in as genuine grief. We hear a story somewhere around us, or something that's happening in the world, or some image comes through that's very real and graphic and personal. And we really do feel the overwhelm and the pain. And even then, we just don't know how to be in relationship to it. So our Tonglen practice can also help us stay real and whole in our body, minds, and hearts as we hear this information, not have to shut down, not get caught up in the drama, but to consciously allow in, at certain points, the suffering of others, so that we can participate, not only because each of us individually needs to add some of our healing energy to the world, or where else is it going to come from, but because we need a way of staying open and in flow, even with that seems to be so overwhelming and beyond us, because our choices are continuously to shut down or to be open, right? And where that line is drawn is going to depend on our capacity as we learn to practice it. How do we make ourselves available as a human being? And to either, when our nervous system gets overwhelmed, there's a general contraction. In the sense that the nature of the ego is the nature of designer contraction. I've sometimes talked about how we live in a certain flinch patterns, and that's natural to us. We've learned to flinch, but how do we begin to learn to unflinch? Because our flinch makes us not only less available to others, but less available to ourselves and to our own humanity and to our own wholeness, and that's not what we want. So for that reason, we might deliberately practice our Tonglen and turn it as well to that thing which seems so big and so overwhelming, which is the suffering of the whole world. So we can practice this Tonglen. There'll be certain ways and occasions in which we might practice. Sometimes we may need to practice because it just comes up for us. It's just overwhelming. We hear it, it comes to our attention. We need to be there for it. Other times it will come up because we deliberately choose to practice, because we want it to be a part of our practice, because we want to be related, our hearts to be related to the world in that way. And so we may set some time aside deliberately as some part of our meditation practice to exercise that part, our heart in that way, and our awareness in that way, and to dedicate some of our own spiritual time and spiritual practice to, the blessing of others, the welfare of others. This is a very important support for our own spiritual practice, as well as support for the world. One of my teachers in China, when I was studying there, one of my Taoist teachers said that we progress in our own practice, we advance in our own practice, 1/3 by training and 2/3 by service. Right? 2/3 by putting into practice on behalf of others what we're learning. Well, he was referring in part to Qigong and cultivating of energy and learning how to develop that and to use it. And he said, you can cultivate all you want, but if you're not using it, if you're not using it to serve others, you're limiting the flow of it all. It's all for the service of others. Well, similarly, in our spiritual practice, in our mind practice, we need to train, right? It's important because we're going to be, taken to the mat each time if we're not developing and cultivating our own capacity to pay attention, to be present, to be in the body, to open the heart, to be mindful and to be heartful. It's hard to take on the world, hard to take on this life, hard to take on our own egos if we're not cultivating that. So we have to train. It's like training muscles, but then we have to use the muscles, to use the muscle of our heart and our attention and our presence. And most importantly, we're not doing it for a separate self. We're not doing our own little spiritual thing. We are integral to the presence of being, the presence of the world, the presence of God. And that continual unfoldment and understanding is essential to our practice. And it waters our practice because it waters the parts of us that might contract and dry out in a way. Keeping the flow open keeps our own practice open and flowing, our own hearts open and flowing. So we might in our practice deliberately take time or set aside a separate time, but always do some mindfulness practice first to get into a present state. And then we might deliberately just think about, because certainly there are lots of images and awarenesses in there. Think about the world. We might have certain images of certain specific people or groups of people that we know are experiencing great oppression or great suffering for one reason or another. It may have come to us another time on the news, but what could we do about it? But now we really can open our hearts and to really try to visualize and make real those people. And it might be through the image of an individual. And it's okay, we don't know these people necessarily. We may have heard something. It's okay to visualize, to use our visualization to represent, all right, here's this person who's going through this thing, or this group of people that's going through that thing. And I deliberately take the time that I couldn't take before to really let that in, to really let in what that particular hardship, suffering, ordeal is like. And then use my Tonglen, as I've learned to use it, to open my heart and to breathe that into my heart. to see that person, to see those people, to welcome, to breathe that into my heart. And from my heart, consciously send back the healing, either in the form, as we've said, of something specific that would really support them. We may have an image or a picture of that, or just support, love, strength, blessing, just the power of our conscious presence that is with them and accompanying them. Right? Because how else can the world be with them and support them in any way if we're not offering energetically and attentively and heartfully our comfort and support? Again, we're not pretending that we're changing the world or changing the drama of nations, the drama of the oppression and the atrocities and all these things that go on. This seems to be in the world. But at the same time, from somewhere, the love has to flow, the heart has to stay open, and it contributes to the heart field of the world, which we'll talk about also. And it keeps us available as human beings. Again, not on the stimulus, dramatic or addictive level that sometimes the news stimulates, but at the level of genuinely opening our presence, genuinely opening our heart, and then allowing this exchange. Sometimes it may be, we may just go to a region of the world. So sometimes I'm saying images may come to us that we've heard on the news of people or groups of people. Other times we might just think of the world, let our mind kind of move out, and we'll begin to remember and see things that are going on in different parts of the world that we know are happening in those areas. And in that way, as our mind moves out, we remember people and we pause to let them become real some way in our minds and to be present with them and to take on some of their pain and to send back some of our healing support and energy. So before we look further, let's take some time now to practice both of those, to exercise your muscles, and to remember that if it becomes very hard or overwhelming, as we've learned to do, notice the part of yourself that is feeling limited or feeling resistant or feels incapable. And then there may be a part of yourself that blames yourself, whatever it is. When you notice that going on, pause and take a moment and be with yourself. And I'll just breathe in and allow that part of yourself, send a blessing back on the exhale to that part of yourself. That will help to relax that and integrate it. And then as you can, come back to hold the world or to hold an individual. So take a moment now, I'll be silent for a few minutes. Just take a moment to let an image come up that's real to you. Maybe from your recent experience or whatever. That represents the kind of suffering that you hear about every day. See that person. See that group of people. See one person or one family in that group of people. And just let them be real to you. Let yourself really feel what their suffering or their trial must be like. And then letting that be real. Breathe in and welcome that from them. See it leaving them in some way, lightening their load as you breathe it in from them, taking it into your own heart and through your own heart into the vastness of that healing space. And on your exhale, let that healing flow back out from your heart and see it going to them and supporting them. Stay with it a while and trust where your heart takes you with that. It may take you to another person. Trust where your heart takes you, but just establish that relationship. Sometimes, I have explained with Tonglen, there's no fixed rule for how long to do it. Sometimes you may feel like you need to stay with one situation, with one person for a long time to establish that flow and establish that connection. Sometimes you might feel relatively quickly that that connection has become real, that that taking on, that welcoming in, and that sending back has become real and has established that flow. You may find that you're then also going to another person or a different situation. So, however it's real for you, you use this time to cultivate that relationship, that Tonglen relationship with suffering in the world. This is an initial practice, and you can return to this later at other times in your practice. Be willing to receive them, be willing to offer your heart to them. Be willing, in a sense, to change places with them in this moment. And then come back. If you've done that for a while, it's important to come back to simply sitting, to your practice of being present in your meditation. Don't linger or turn the Tonglen into an ego thing. Just a part of your practice. Come back to being present. Come back to your body and your breath. Come back to this moment. So that in a way we might always bookend our Tonglen practice with the context of our meditation practice. Not as a rule. This can come up, of course, during life. You say, excuse me, I'm going to meditate and then I'm going to do Tonglen. No, Tonglen, I'm just saying when you do it, when you're in your meditation practice, do it this way. It's supportive. But use Tonglen as it's always as a way of being in relationship and available to others in your life, in your daily life. I want to give one other model for working this way, and then I want to pause and we'll see if there's some response, questions you'd like to ask. Another way of working with Tonglen is to start right just in the circle of your room and let your mind begin to move out in wider and wider circles so that you begin to understand, or what's happening around me in my community, in my state, right, in this part of my country. So again, let this be an easy, a relaxed process. Just let's see where your mind goes. But you can train your mind or your visualization to see and recognize and let in what's really going on around you. It's feel as if your awareness is expanding and your heart is expanding, just to include wider circles as a part of yourself. Let it move across your community, let it move across your state. And as you do, be aware. Let it be aware of where the suffering lies, or those images that come up for you. And as that happens, just pause and really allow that in and send a blessing back. Do that Tonglen, that suffering. Begin to gradually spread across this country. Again, there's no rule. You may stay in a very small locale. There's a lot of work to do there, a lot of heart to be. But then gradually you might also open up. Again, because the whole world, the whole country comes into our awareness these days. And so we need to have a way of opening and being present with all of that data so that it's more than data, so that it's availability on our part to the wide circle of humanity. Think of the things that have been going on in this country as you move out. And pause and be present with those, again, groups or individuals that arise for you and say, oh, let me be with this person. Let me gradually expand the circle of my awareness as well as the circle of my heart. Let it be now real awareness instead of just mental data awareness from the news, the real awareness of people out there, and letting them into my heart, breathing in their suffering, sending back my conscious support, my healing, my blessing. In our first practice, in this first moving out, it would be easy to just notice the images of those people for whom it's easy to have compassion. It would be natural, and it would also be natural to kind of glide past, right, or have a harder time including people with whom we have negative judgment. People that we say, oh, that person or that group of people is causing all the problem, right? Which is always a false way of seeing things. I'm open to this. Just in the beginning, just notice that. At some point, you might want to have a way of practicing. Right? When our circle of blessing is moving out, what do we do when we encounter people or groups of people that we deem unworthy of our blessing? Right? Suddenly our judgment comes in. Now we're the Lord of judgment instead of the Lord of mercy, the God of judgment instead of the God of mercy. Okay? We talked about in our presentation on the solstice, pre-Christmas, on Jesus and the Beatitudes. How Jesus in the Beatitude on mercy Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. That word mercy in the Aramaic, the roots, the etymological roots of that word mercy, is related to the word womb. It suggests that within us there's a womb of mercy and that we can birth that mercy or birth that blessing. And that would be that heart, right? That's behind us, that is us, that's supporting us. So can we, rather than coming from the reactive or ego place, can we birth mercy as opposed to judgment? And the whole idea, you know, and when we look at our Western history and we talk about the movement from Old Testament to New Testament and that evolution of the God of judgment into the God of mercy. To my mind, that's really referring to our own human evolution, our own egos. You know, are we internalizing the God of judgment or the God of mercy? The God of the ego or the God of the heart? And so if that's a helpful image, say, oh, allow me to extend that mercy. Judgment is a natural way of responding, of course, for the mind and for the ego. Do we want to stay there forever? Discrimination, understanding, seeing patterns, that kind of judgment. That's important. But to realize how the ego projects a general condemnation, judgment, that is its job. And we're being told, allow the Lord of mercy. It may also take practice. Be gentle with yourself in that area, but that's just another thing to consider. Thich Nhat Hanh tells the story, as you may be aware, you know, he tells a story, a true story. This was happening all the time in Vietnam. And he was there, and afterwards, and all the refugees escaping from Vietnam, a lot of the totally, you know, bereft refugees were escaping on boats from Vietnam, and some of them were being, you know, plagued by pirates, bandits, river pirates. And he tells the story of one poor refugee girl who was being raped by a river pirate. And he says, and he has a poem about this, and he says, you know, if the causes in my life had been different, I would have been that refugee girl. And if the contributing causes in my life had been a little different, I would have been that river pirate. And so that understanding, right, that we're all the product of our causes, and we want to go deeper to the roots. We want to bless the roots of what contributes to pain, to cruelty, to suffering, to dysfunction. May all beings be relieved of suffering and the causes of suffering, we say. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. So this is the spirit in which we may practice. And of course, it's natural to immediately go out to the people who most easily inspire our compassion, and that's okay. But notice these things, the nature of your own heart, its capacity for judgment or mercy. Seeing the smaller picture or the bigger picture. So there are a couple of more things I want to reflect on before our little time is over, but I want to pause and see if there's anything that you need to speak about. I know this is a big subject. It's a big demand. I'm squeezing it here into an hour, which is crazy, but I hope it is meaningful. Okay. And I'm going to take my mic out so I can hear if there's anybody who would like to share something that's coming up for you or a question you have about this this practice, unmute yourself and feel free to speak. Ideally, we'd be all in circle in a retreat here, and we'd have an hour to sit around in a circle and talk about these things. Give a whole hour to another day to this, or a lifetime. This work, of course, is also related to something equally intimidating, which we're going to be talking about when we do in 2 Saturdays and 2 Thursdays, when we talk about the last subject in our little looking at Buddhist teaching, which is this dedication to all sentient beings.
Well, I think this is Joanne. I just wanted to say that, Carson and I are jumping in at the end of what had to have been an amazing few months of teaching. And over the years of knowing you, I have, tried to take in Tonglen and what it means and have practiced as best I could. But I can tell from listening to you today that the exhalation and the pouring out of love to others has been something that I could feel and practice, but the taking in and the breathing in and actually switching places with that person, and rather than blocking it, just really, inhaling it in and bringing it in. I just want to share that was a big aha moment for me, and thank you.
Yes, beautiful. Yes, that's very true. We can notice you may assume, oh, I'm a loving person, but now where are my limitations, which are all very understandable. We need to, as it's anything else, we need to train in love. We need to train in developing a capacity to let it in genuinely without, right, being turned inside out, but to stay present and open, and then allow the love to flow back, to become vehicles of that whole process of reciprocity. It's a life training.
Paul?
Yeah.
I'm just noticing this morning that for for whatever reason, my heart feels lighter and more open, and I'm able to do this practice in an unexpected way. And I this is a comment really more than anything, just that, the training part, I see. It was an aha moment for me today to actually think about making this part of my own meditation practice, so that I don't do it just when, the stars align and I feel like I can be open and ready to do it, but that I'm doing it regularly so that I'm doing it regularly.
Yes, thank you. The other thing which I briefly alluded to, but is strongly emphasized in all practice, especially in Buddhist practice, especially in Tibetan Buddhist practice, where they encourage people to do offerings and dedication and namdro and all these practices for years as greasing the wheels for our capacity to practice at all. Simply because this giving away ourselves, whether it's through bowing, whether it's through dedication, right? Whether it's through our offerings to the teacher, the giving away is clearing the obstructions in the ego and making us more oriented towards releasing that and opening and serving. And consequently, the practice begins to become, the way is paved for the practice, because all that congestion, right, and obstruction that is in all our, years or lifetimes of ego conditioning is beginning to be released and loosened and softened. And then we find, oh, there's a lightness also that we can begin to bring to our practice. So these all go together. Yeah. Well, I would like to end with one other practice. Plug in here. I think we did briefly before when we were kind of previewing all of this. And that is to be with ourselves, our own presence, our own energy fields, our own hearts. To feel, if you can, to sense and rest in the energy field of your heart. That same energy field that's able to open and bring in others. That same energy field that's able to radiate out and give back. And then if you can, allow yourselves to sense in the same way the energy field of the planet, the heart field of the planet. The planet is also a great heart field. Trust your inner process, whatever you need to do to sense that in some way, at some level. You might visualize it, which could be helpful, or you may just sense it, feel it. The energy field of the planet as a heart field, the energy field of your own heart. Feel their resonance together. Feel how you're cultivating, as you're cultivating your heart field and your openness to spirit, you're cultivating a capacity to receive and to give back to the energy field of the planet, which is being, again, generated by all of the heart fields on the planet. And so now with your Tonglen, let yourself feel as if you're breathing in the energy field of the planet into your heart field and into your inner heart. And on the exhale, send back from your heart field into the heart field of the planet. And as you breathe in the heart field of the planet, again, breathe in all of its struggle, all of its discordancy, all of its pain. You say, oh my God, can I really do that? There's no you here. You see, the ego is not involved in this. It's a direct connection between heart fields. Your heart field is connected to universal heart field. Okay. So welcome in all that distress, disharmony, and collective energy of the heart field of the planet. Welcome it into your heart field and out into universal heart. Now on your exhale, allow that energy and that presence and that heart field to expand back out into and to support the planetary heart field. Again, this is a it's a universal practice. It's a practice that, again, orients our whole being. We don't have to have a very specific visualization, but we can begin to get into the habit, the training, the capacity to feel this reciprocal relationship all the time. So we're cultivating the wholeness of our own heart field so we can receive and give back to and add some positive harmonic to the heart field of the planet. That's a good practice to do, with eyes closed and visualizing and feeling that. You can also open your eyes and just see the world around you. Relax and take it in as a whole. Everythingness, everything, the whole, as we say, the whole enchilada. This is called enchilada Tonglen practice. Okay. Reality is manifest in front of us visually, auditorily, spatially. as well as heart field. The heart field of the whole planet is also vibrating in this room and in the world around us. Right? The sensual experience, all of it, the emotional, all of it. Can we just welcome it in whatever form it's in now, and send it back with the blessing of wholeness? Can we do eyes open in that way to the world in front of us? So then it also is gradually, as part of our practice, becoming natural, right? To be integrating our own wholeness, to come from that place, and then to be beings, as we've said, where the in itself is the for others, where the integrity, the inner integrity, is naturally the integrity of being there for others. Whereas Jesus says of the two commandments, the one commandment, to be present with reality, which he calls to love your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength, which is to become whole and integrated, is not different than love your neighbor as yourself, to be present for all of reality as the wholeness of your own being. It's your every moment practice, whether you're washing the dishes, or with a person you love, or with a person who pushes your buttons, or walking down the street, or sitting in your meditation. This is what's being asked of us. Okay, I'm not saying, see, it's simple. I can do it. Why can't you? No. This is my practice. It's our practice. It's just offering the opportunity to begin to feel the wholeness of this universal practice, and to have it support us, as how we be in the world. Which is also the point, when we'll talk about in a couple of weeks, the point of dedicating what seems to be impossible. I'm dedicated to the salvation of all beings throughout time and space. Really? Are you crazy? No, I'm open. I'm practicing. I got the long vision. It's just a way of being here now. Right? We've got some choices. Why not be here that way? All right. So I know much may come up for you around this, and we have other opportunities to exchange. Next week, next Saturday, which will be the last of the Tonglen series, we're going to look at how, again, we be open in the same way to the most challenging issues. I call it existential Tonglen, life and death. How do we be there for our own life and death? How do we be there for our own past and future? How do we begin to heal ourselves at that existential level? I don't know, but maybe we'll figure something out. Thank you, each of you, for accompanying each other on this journey. Thank you for showing up so faithfully for so long. It's creating a heart field, right? It has some power for us all. So thank you. Thank you, people who've shown up for the first time. Hopefully we'll see you again. Please be blessed. Have a blessed new year. And we'll see you on Saturday.